Hello team and welcome back to another Line Warcast. This is your map today. It is a 1v1 on the new patch, new unit balance, new changes to the game. We'll get into what those changes are in a little bit. The two players today, someone said that my nickname sucks in blue and Plant Block in red. Before we get into the cast, a little bit of housekeeping stuff. I've bbeen uploading mostly cast every 3 days for the last few months or so. I'm going to change that into one cast every 7 days. I'm going to do one every week for a variety of reasons. And you'll notice that I haven't been streaming Line War on Twitch as much, like slash at all, in the last month or so. Again, variety of reasons. I'm very excited to play Line War in the future, and if I jump into queue, I'll of course stream it. But you know, it's not like I'm never gonna stream Line War again. And if you see this slowdown in the cast tempo, no reason for alarm. So I'm gonna link the patch notes in the description. If I forget, then just all caps scream at me in the comments, please, and I will make sure to link those. There's been a bunch of changes. It's pretty substantial. TLDR, in a lot of ways, infantry got a move speed and attack bonus, or rather attack damage buff. Tanks, a little bit of a nerf. Commandos, a little bit of a nerf. And entrenchments got a very big buff. And obviously broad stroking what the changes are, because there's tons of changes. Rockets, also a little bit of rework on them. Strikers, interceptors, and just small things like missile boats have 10 less hit points. They go down from 150 to 140. So you can, again, check out the link in the description for all the things that changed. And if you're new to Line War and you don't know what anything means, well, then it doesn't matter, because this is just the game that there's no change for you. Welcome to Line War. Nicknames in the bottom here in blue, Plant Block in the north in red. And just as an aside, you know, watch, like in the Discord channel, you see, I watch every day that there's people always trying to find games and looking for matches channel. Props and shout out to all those folks who've been playing every day, being very active in the game. Steam reviews sometimes make it sound like there's no new players that show up or there's no games to be found, and I know everybody's experience is different, and you know, you'll show up at a certain time of day and maybe there aren't that many lobbies. Other times there are a lot of lobbies. But in general, check out the Discord if you're looking to try to find games. It's not as bad as Steam may make it sound. So in the north, enough rambling from me. 3 barracks, 2 towns, and 2 factories for Plant Block. 2 towns, an airport, and a factory for Nickname in the south. And Nickname is going for helicopters out of this airport. If it was me playing in this patch, now that infantry got a buff, I would only be playing barracks. All barracks, all the time. I think that the infantry micro, very fun. They're obviously a great unit to expand with to capture more territory and get more income. And excited to see how this goes with the new unit balance. I've played one game on the new patch. I've not spectated a 1v1, not seen a 1v1 yet with the new balance. And Plant Block's got a 4th barracks to the south. Neither player will know where the other one is. This is Nickname's vision. And we can see that red is nowhere in sight at all. And Nickname adds 2 more barracks. So both of these players who know what they're doing, Nickname and Plant Block, have been around for a while. Very good players. And they're building barracks to start the game. The build that I've seen folks kind of talk about is this 2 factory, some eco, and then as many barracks as possible opener, which is what Plant Block's generally going for. Building a SAM now out of the factory, which there's going to be a lot of blue helicopters in a little bit, so the fact that red is already starting that SAM count is probably good for them. But otherwise, it's just artillery pieces. I guess actually it's just 2 artillery pieces for Plant Block. And then moving into SAMs. I can't click on these buildings, so I don't know if it's a mix of SAMs and artillery, but for now it's just 2 artillery pieces and more SAMs. Nickname is just move commanding these 4 infantry, probably into this location in the mountain and forest, and then I would expect to see Nickname probably build a barracks or even 2 barracks in this location to start trying to cap the right-hand side of the map. Infantry are a very good capping unit, as mentioned. Give you a lot of economy over time. And blue has almost got a second helicopter. First tank is nearly done for nicknames, so showing that tanks, although they got a nerf, which their firepower went down and their HP did as well. But I mean, that doesn't mean that they're useless at all. And in general, we'll have to wait a little bit to see how the meta develops. We've learned the hard way that very early on with patch notes, we might have assumptions about what will be strong and what will not be strong, but it takes a while for players to actually try to abuse the different imbalances in the game to find out what is the optimal thing. And second factory for nickname. Plant Block's adding another barracks. I love it. I'm always going to cheer for the player who's going for more barracks. And sometimes it's come up. I don't watch these matches before I cast them. Like me casting right now, this is the first time I've seen this game. You know? So I'm watching along with you. This choke is probably going to become very important. It's going to be the place where first contact kind of happens. At this point, both players will see where the other one is. In general terms, of course, Plant Block will know that nickname is to the south of them. Nickname will know that Plant Block is to the north. And that's about it. And the helicopters, I think, maybe not a surprise, but definitely nickname has a little bit of a, not an advantage, but if blue can get a bunch of helicopters over time and just show up with a big swarm of them all at once, it's a very strong move. We've seen time and time again where players have done that, and the helicopters, there's no real answer, or they're able to jump in a place where the opponent's SAMs aren't located. Plant Block's got one SAM going to the front, the other one is chilling at home behind these 3 artillery pieces in the entrenchment, looking cool. Very cool. And look at that. Barracks on the right-hand side for nickname. So I'm 1 for 1 today on predictions. So this is an interesting thing. I don't think, in general, we would have seen nickname try to dig in that close. And maybe this is just because entrenchments are better, that nickname will start to dig in here. At the edge of the forest, depending on how good entrenchments are, if blue can get situated and red just runs into this, maybe the entrenchments are enough for nickname to be able to hold on against like a bigger force. If we look at, I mean, I'm trying to look at and read the patch notes as this is going on. So entrenched unit firepower bonus actually got a nerf, so 20% down to 10%, but the armor bonus for the entrenched units went up 10% from 30% to 40%. And the absolute range bonus for attacks from the player in the entrenchments more than doubled. So from 0.3 range, which I'm not sure, 0.3 range is probably about here, to 0.7 range. We'll see. I think it's about like here. I gotta keep going back. There's 0.7, I guess. And usually before they would have only started shooting closer. And I guess now watching this, the real big thing that this does is when this infantry is standing right here, instead of just 2 of the units firing, this third one also does. Which is hence why entrenchments got a pretty big buff in this patch. Plant Block's got their first airport now on the way. A little bit of tank micro from nickname. And although tanks got that nerf, all it means is that instead of absolutely trashing infantry, now they just like only trash infantry. You know, they don't just own them completely, but they definitely will be able to take on this many infantry. 5 infantry for 2 tanks, I think. Like, unless my internal math on even with the nerf tank version, tanks are still pretty good. They already got 2 infantry. If they run into the forest, they're probably going to die because they're tanks and they move super slowly through forests. But we knew that. And income-wise, 670 for nickname, 710 for Plant Block, who was starting to flank this entrenched position from nickname. I mean, there's a obvious, you know, the disadvantage to entrenchments is that your units are stationary and your opponent can just go around them. And in general, there's different situations, of course, right? In Line War, it's very fun because every situation is slightly different. But if you're struggling with entrenchments, just try to go around them. Just don't even deal with them, because you got to think about it, that every like the whole time that your opponent is entrenched, those units aren't doing anything. They aren't capping for your opponent. They aren't making your opponent money. They're just wasting money in a lot of ways. The upkeep of those units sitting in there, the opponent has to pay income for that, and they're not gaining anything. So if you just go around it, then you get a situation like this. Now the helicopters here for nickname are gonna be huge. But there's a real situation if these helicopters weren't here and these red infantry kind of beeline towards this location, they would actually be able to do decent damage while these infantry for blue try to dig in. Because as infantry try to dig in and units try to go into entrenchments, they take fatigue, which is they take damage to their health. But instead there's 5 helicopters or 4 helicopters, whatever, I can't count, and Plant Block has to back up out of the forest. And on the right-hand side, this is a huge deal. Nickname's got the advantage with the second barracks on the way. Plant Block has 1 barracks in the north that is starting to be built to actually cap the right-hand side. But this is a lot of eco on the right-hand side, and we can check the economies. 770 for blue and 760 for Nickname, who has 1 refinery but running out of gas. Bombers also, the energy consumption of bombers went up in this patch. I'm not sure if we're going to see bombers. I just thought of energy because I noticed that Nickname was out of it. But Nickname doing the smart thing, keeping 3 tanks here, and then moving the rest up to the north, or rather to this like little choke thing. Plant Block's vision can see these tanks probably because they're not in the forest. If they were fully in the forest, I wonder if those tanks would actually be stealth. And 3rd barracks for Nickname. And my big prediction at this point in the game is that these 3 barracks are going to win Nickname the game. They're going to win Nickname the whole match because blue is going to take this big swath of territory. And that's going to be the difference in the econs. Top down, this is how many territories both players have capped. Relatively even at the moment. Can't wait to see what happens here. This looks like the sort of perfect location for a rocket as the game progresses. Because I don't think either player is going to build a rocket super quickly here. But if they did, this choke might be a good spot for it. Or rather, to shoot that rocket. 1 striker and a 2nd interceptor on the way for Plant Block, who actually has a 2nd airport. And building strikers or interceptors out of that 2nd airport. Nickname has 2 interceptors, building a 3rd of their own. Interceptors are the coolest unit in the game. This is known. There's no it's like an objective thing, very agreed upon in the line war community. Ask anybody, they're all going to say interceptors. No one in the comments going to disagree. Trust me, I know as an interceptor aficionado. 2 tanks just yeeting themselves into this. They're soaking up a lot of damage. Not many of the blue infantry are getting in the fight. And if they did, I mean, they're kind of like in the fight, but they're trying to deal with these 2 SAMs, which are doing like the most damage for Red's army here. Blue's units are going to thin out here, and Nickname is going to have to fall back to the defensive positions. There's 4 SAMs in an entrenchment in the forest, but that's not going to be enough for how many units Red has. And now that Plant Block has, I think, 3 interceptors, over time these helicopters, they're going to be harder to use. There's already 5 there's a lot of SAMs here for Plant Block as well. So on the anti-air front, Red definitely has enough. Great for Plant Block that they have more units than blue on the right-hand side. At this first engagement between the units on the right-hand side, this is going to make Nickname have to regroup off of these 3 barracks, which is still an advantage. That blue has more barracks on the right-hand side, so although they lose that first battle, over time they might be fine, and I absolutely love this barracks on the left-hand side for Plant Block as well. As long as it can stay up. As long as Nickname doesn't snipe it. I mean, it's in the forest, and Nickname's not close enough, so it's not like blue sees it at the moment. And the interceptors and strikers have elected to go on the left-hand side. This is really good. If the blue helicopters were closer to the left-hand side, which they could still reach it from this airport, having these 3 interceptors with the 2 strikers, very good mix. I would love it if this patch, this, you know, striker interceptor play became more of a thing, because I feel like we haven't really seen too much striker interceptor in all the different variations of balance. Of course, every game's different, so I'm sure there's been tons of games played that people have done a lot of interceptor striker, but I personally haven't seen it. It always seemed like we went from only build strikers to only build interceptor bomber, but never both interceptor striker. Great dogfight. And then on the right hand side of the screen, you just see that Plant Block's trying to go for this and get into this forest. Defender's advantage for blue because they're closer to the blue producers, so the blue units are going to be able to reinforce themselves quicker. And a tank advantage for blue, which is big. And I'm just watching. I feel like Plant Block's going to be able to take out all of this. Because of how many SAMs there are, it's not like these blue helicopters can do anything. Nicknames move them to the right-hand side to try to push with the blue infantry out of these 3 barracks. And it's a good play because there's nothing they would have been able to do here with how many red SAMs there are. And so far, with how many tanks just rolled in, I think, obviously pre-patch, the tanks would have done better. But there's still so many red units that it's not like the 3 tanks would have been able to destroy this. Plant Block has made a very good move here, I think. And it's a great army composition. It's not even that too light on infantry. Good amount of artillery pieces. There's no tanks, but who cares as long as you're continuing to push and able to push with artillery pieces. Why need tanks? And we'll see what these 4 helicopters can do. There's only 1 SAM on the right hand side for Plant Block, so 4 helicopters would be able to snipe that SAM. Income wise, 1,000 for blue, 890 for red, and I think that is probably this difference with how much Nickname's been able to take of the right hand side of the map. And now blue has the advantage on the right hand side because they get to dig in at the edge of this forest. Personally, I also wonder if like these entrenchments should be a little bit further behind the forest so that the red units have to actually walk into the forest and get that speed bonus penalty. But that being said, like playing Nickname on ladder, I think I'm 1 and probably 25 against Nickname, so I'm not the one to talk. This is a lot of red. These artillery pieces from Nickname are in like a perfect position right behind the factory. Factory provides like a nice little body block, and also a factory auto heals itself. I mean, all units auto heal themselves in line war. They just cost income, but as long as you don't lose this thing and you just can swat away all the infantry on top of the factory, it's just this big meat shield that takes a lot of damage for you. 3rd factory here for Nickname, who has 4 interceptors and a helicopter on that airport. I'm building another airport on the right-hand side. Plant Block's interceptors continuing to do work. I think they're going to get this last helicopter, if they're smart. Which they aren't. Oh, they are. This one's going to do it. It's not going to do it. Wow. Luckiest pilot in the world. This is a big moment in the game. If Plant Block can get this position, clearly entrenchments are more of a thing that players have wanted to build since the patch. So then red could just dig in here on this choke. And I mean, that's pretty much it. And then probably here in this forest to deal with these 3 factories. Because blue's going to be able to counter push pretty hard into this position. It is just 3 factories. So like technically Plant Block probably has more producers in general, or more units that can come down here. But we'll see. That's why we watched the game. Unfortunately for Plant Block, they're going to lose that barracks. There's no way the planes are going to get there in time. Can't wait for that teleportation technology to come out. And this is looking very good for Nickname. This is looking very, very good for Nickname because they're securing this entire front and going to be able to back cap to the bottom right. This is, I think, just going to be a minor setback. 940 income for Plant Block, 1040 for Nickname. Like, not at all counting out Plant Block here. Definitely both players are in the game. This is just a lot of economy on the right-hand side that Nickname might be able to cap. And then as long as Nickname can eventually retake this location, which Blue's going to be able to push from both sides, right? They're going to be able to push from the left out of these producers and the right with these 3 factories and now this 1 barracks. It would almost be cool for Plant Block to just rebuild that barracks and say, oh yeah, let me just take that again, because this is a lot of eco, and it's not a very comfortable position if Blue has to send units down to the bottom left. Obviously, in general, you'd want to just keep pushing all the units towards this and the center of the map. Wonderful army composition from Red. Still on 2 airports. We'll maybe see an airstrip pretty soon. I think these red airports are filling up relatively quickly, and a dock in the back. Clearly, this is going to be Plant Block's second, maybe third. Yeah, second refinery is in the water, which will be very, very safe. It's just going to take a while to actually set that up because the dock has to produce a boat first, then the boat has to... I mean, I'm just explaining how line war works at this point. You know, it's going to take longer than just, you know, building it on a territory that you've capped. Say here, for example, but Plant Block can't afford to do that because it would not be safe at all. Nickname's got more infantry in the top right. With some micro, I think that Blue's going to be able to win that fight. Or more importantly, Blue's going to be able to at least stall it out while this barracks caps to the bottom right and sends Blue further ahead. Plant Block is going to split the army now. We'll see what Plant Block's vision is. Seeing these defensive lines, now Plant Block's just going to go off to the right and start capping, which I think is the best call. Because you don't want to run into a whole bunch of entrenched artillery, especially in a game where the units have been patched and entrenchments are even better. And income-wise, 1,000 for Plant Block, 1120 for Nickname. This is sort of related to what, like, saying earlier about how if your opponent entrenches, then just go around them. These artillery pieces might start fighting these artillery pieces because this is actually the same territory, and when you try to cap a territory, your units try to spread out throughout the whole territory. I guess for some reason they're just going to cap here instead of trying to cap this one. I don't understand what's going on there. But either way, these artillery pieces for Blue are doing nothing except for defending, and now Red is able to cap these 2 territories and potentially push even farther. So again, if you run into artillery, like into entrenchments, maybe just try to go around them. This is a huge transfer of planes. Oh, I guess it's not a transfer. But the strikers and interceptors are going to the right. Plant Block's going to start digging into the forest, and we'll definitely be able to set this all up before Blue's army gets here. The same problem still applies, though, is that Nickname is capping on the right-hand side of the map, and now Red is only defending and giving up all of this territory in front of those entrenchments. Sam's moving off to the right to deal with the helicopters, which were pretty much forced into lifting off because this red army was approaching them. I love how Plant Block kept some SAMs with this artillery army. It's only 2 of the SAMs, but thankfully for Red, there's not a whole bunch of helicopters or strikers or something for Nickname at home to be able to snipe those SAMs. Destroyer has now capped this territory, or is trying to cap. Sometimes I don't understand what happens, because this has happened to me too. You'll build a unit, usually it only happens with a single unit, but they'll start capping, but then they will stop over time. And this isn't getting capped for Plant Block, which is actually kind of a big deal. With 2 airports, Red is going to need the energy. So I suspect at some point Plant Block's going to look over to the top left, probably curse, and not understand why these boats weren't capping. This will now start capping. This will now start capping. Okay, there we go. Because I would have expected that we see this thing, like the pie graph or whatever. I still don't understand what happened up there. Maybe they were capping the whole time, but that's definitely happened to me. Either way, Plant Block's got that second refinery on the way. And Nickname is starting to push out of this forest now off of all of these artillery pieces. Clearly, Nickname has thought about this factory getting hit by the water by digging in these artillery pieces. I suppose they give a little bit of coverage to any units that show up this way. But Plant Block's not in that body of water, so Blue doesn't really have to worry about it. And for Nickname, I think this entrenchment is fine because Nickname is still capping to the right-hand side. Income-wise, 1230 for Blue, 1070 for Red. Third airport on the left-hand side for Plant Block. I love that Plant Block's going for a lot of air here. I'm a big fan. There's no airstrips yet. So these two airports, I suppose this one has stopped building planes. This one, after it's done, this interceptor will stop building because there's no more room to put those planes. 3 SAMs is not going to be enough to deal with this many strikers, but they might be able to destroy at least one of the interceptors, and they do. And something that's worth noting is that strikers got a buff here. Their speed was increased. Their anti-air cannon was increased. Their anti-ship missile damage and missile range. I guess it's like to ground. I believe it's to ground units. They got buffed as well. And I didn't realize, but Sam's actually got the range they can attack against ground units. The range has been nerfed, which is actually nice because I've got kited by a Sam so many times, and it's this infuriating like moment in the game when the Sams are kiting your infantry. It feels sort of weird, so maybe that's not as much of a thing anymore. Here comes one of the helicopters. For Nickname, there's no more SAMs left here, so these artillery pieces are going to perish. And I guess what's kind of nice actually about building this airport is that this functions as an airstrip for Plant Block. Because it's already got this many planes on the left-hand side, so clearly some red planes transferred over. No more docks, or no more boats, pardon me, out of the dock for Plant Block, which is smart. So many times I've built dock to try to cap one refinery location and then forgot to turn off boats. And then you show up with like 30 destroyers in the top water for no reason. But Plant Block, more on top of it than I am. 1100 income for Plant Block, 1300 for Nickname. So still very close. This is still a problem, though, because Nickname is capping here, and Red has run out of locations that are easily captured. Everything else on the map now, Plant Block has to contest against Blue's units. There's a relatively concerted push on the left-hand side from Plant Block. Concerted might not even actually be the right word there. Here I'm trying to use a $5 word, can't even use it right. But we'll have to see Plant Block take all of this territory, which is like, it's going great right now for Plant Block. This is a very good start. Already trying to take away this territory. Maybe it's just a visual thing, because this territory also isn't pie charting. Was this always neutral? Is that the difference? That these were controlled by Blue and this one was a neutral territory? Whatever, it does not matter. Either way, Plant Block's capping in the bottom left. We'll see if it's enough. At some point, Plant Block's going to have to move out here. Red definitely has enough to do it right now. Look at that. Look at that. On the same page. There's enough SAMs here. There's 6 of them, or 5 of them. No, yeah, 5 of them, I can count, for Plant Block, which isn't really quite enough if all of these planes decided to launch at the SAMs at once, but it would still be a decent trade for the Blue SAMs. The red infantry is going to run forward first. I think the more patient play it would be to let the artillery pieces get in front of the infantry and start shelling these positions, because the infantry and the defensive lines can't hit the artillery pieces when the artillery pieces are shelling. We'll see if this is close enough. I don't think it actually is. It will take a little bit of micro. It's definitely finicky. But plant blocks set up for potentially a successful counter push on the right-hand side of the map. What a game. With these three fronts going on, both players still very close. 1450 for blue, 1060 for red. But like I said, red's going to be able to actually push here. Yeah, these artillery pieces are starting to open up on the defensive lines. And so it's important, because then if red can cap this back, then the economic difference doesn't matter as much. And plant blocks also set themselves up decent to start capping the left-hand side of the map as well. Okay, well, so the entrenchments look very cool in this position. They're going to buy a lot of time. It's sort of tough because by having the infantry in front of the artillery pieces, the artillery can't really, you know, cover for the infantry while they're just getting shelled by these blue artillery pieces. It's kind of a bit of a trade-off. And this is how long it takes for infantry that have dug in and then regained all their fatigue health. This is how long it takes for them to die when artillery pieces are shelling them. So it's a decent amount of time. I mean, this buys us quite a bit of time for red, or for blue rather, to get more units at home. There's a dock in the middle. Maybe it would actually be kind of cool for blue to build transport boats to go across here. But since it's an actual real boat, I assume that Nickname is going to build... There are going to be missile boats in this center location, which is going to cut off these red planes from being able to move to the right-hand side without some micro involved. And that plant block's going to have to take these airports and kind of do like a... You know, like an attack line from the north so that they go around this lake in general. Either way, these missile boats for Nickname are going to be very important, I think. Plant Block is the first player to build a launch pad. Launch pad construction time went down by 24 seconds. They take 2 minutes now to build, but the rocket actually takes 24 more seconds to produce, kind of offsetting that. And this rocket's in a very good location. It could be used in the center here. It could be used probably until like this point, potentially hitting this refinery. And then certainly, probably actually wouldn't be able to hit the right-hand side. Here comes Nickname's place. So let's, planes, pardon me. So let's see if I was right about how well 5 SAMs would do. They got 2 planes already. They might get a third. Here come the interceptors, which should be able to pick up at least 2 of the strikers. And they do. Can they get 3? Probably not. And I don't see a launch pad for Nickname. Building an airstrip over here. But let's check the ecos now. They might start to switch. 1090 for blue, or for red. 1510 for blue, who is still capping on the bottom right. And that's where that income difference is really coming from. Now Plant Block's going to start taking some of it back. It's so important when you take back economy, because not only do you get more, your opponent loses it. I'm optimistic for Plant Block, although I still think that Nickname is in the better position. The rocket could change that, though. Certainly a very strong rocket. You can imagine if it landed right here and took out all of these blue units, then red could push. Then potentially get themselves back into that forest that they lost at the beginning of the game. Rather, took and then lost as this game's gone on. Good cleanup for Nickname. It'll depend, like, if blue decides to keep pushing is an open question. I don't think that Nickname can actually push through this, and I've loved that Plant Block has started mixing in tanks here. out of these factories. Still has the aerial advantage. There's no SAMs for blue. Makes a lot of sense because Nickname needs to continue to build units that will be able to fight, and SAMs aren't really that unit, so the artillery pieces and the tanks are what blue needs to produce. There is one flower of SAMs here. I suppose actually Nickname just has enough SAMs. It's just hard to cover this much ground with how wide this front is. And my apologies, I'm shifting the camera around too quickly. But there's a lot going on. Plant block making good progress on the right-hand side. Nickname's got 2 missile boats in this little lake and will elect to push into the forest. Plant block's still got a group of infantry down in the bottom left, which are doing a great job. Nickname is now in the negative on money per minute at 1480, pardon me, total economy. 1120 for plant block, so we're seeing that slight shift back in red's favor. Good recall on these planes from plant block when the SAMs show up. And it might, I wonder if plant block actually is recalling because of the SAMs or because this blob is going to become a problem. Nickname has enough SAMs here. 1 full dot of SAMs for how many red planes there are. I mean, I said that earlier for plant block situation, so maybe not. Maybe the strikers can actually deal with that many SAMs, but this is a pretty scary push from Nickname. Because there's nothing really on the ground that plant block has to deal with this. All of these infantry showing up, maybe if they all grouped up and then jumped on the artillery pieces before they deployed, they'd be able to destroy it. And the red units are sort of dispersing, or like some are going to the forest, some are going to the north. So if they split up, maybe Nickname is going to be able to clean this up. Especially with all these planes. Yeah, maybe plant block's actually in a lot of trouble. I love line war. It goes from one moment of me feeling like this is, you know, super fine, but then the next you realize maybe not. And then in 2 minutes from now, after this rocket launches, I might be back on team plant block for who's going to win this game. 1130 income for plant block. 1520 for Nickname. So we're back to sub 200 income difference. 4 missile boats are super good. They're also very good in this location because on this airport, for these planes to land, they can't land from the north. The way this runway is configured, they have to land from the south, so they're gonna have to loop around this, and they would all get taken out by the 4 missile boats. Artillery blobs, as much as they are clowned in the Discord and have as long as I've been playing at least, like, artillery blobs have always been something people have complained about and asked how to deal with. And the real answer is it's just very tough. When your opponent has this many artillery pieces, you need overwhelming air. Tanks, definitely something that you can use. An overwhelming number of infantry, who unfortunately you kind of have to micro them so that the artillery pieces are not deployed when the infantry sprint in. Or rockets. Rockets also something that you can use to deal with this. And I've seen chatter that rockets are being used more now that the patch is out. So that might even be the answer if you see an arty blob, try to build a rocket if you got time. GG. I believe that plant block probably tapped out on that, since the push on the right hand side was fizzling and Nickname had the eco advantage. But well played both, and happy patch. Happy patch, folks. Good luck, have fun on ladder. Like I said, I'll be uploading a cast once every 7 days instead of once every 3. And we'll definitely stream Line War again, maybe occasionally. But not for now. Anyway, hope you have a wonderful night, day, evening, whatever it is. Shouts out to all the folks playing Line War games every day. I salute you. We salute you. Peace.